Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be doing my August 2025 reading wrap-up, and I was able to get through 4 books this month. Still not hitting my 6-month quota, but I had 2 5-stars. I actually really quite enjoyed my reading month this month. I'm really excited about it. I hit a bunch of authors that I quite enjoy, and we're going to chat about it. We're going to chat about it. It's crazy that September is here. Like, honestly, this year has gone by so quickly. And I've already read 2 books in the month of September, so like I'm really crushing it this month. I'm really excited about that. And they've all been great. I'm gonna have reviews up on all of those very soon. But let's start with book number 1 for the month, and that is Sleep Tight by J.H. Merkert. Do have a whole review on this book. J.H. Merkert, he writes under an alias, or pen name, I guess we could say it. He has, I think he does like fantasy or thrillers of like a different genre elsewhere. But anything that he writes that's like horror adjacent, he writes under J.H. Merkert. I'm a big fan. I've read everything that he's released so far except for Spider and the Fly, which literally just came out and is sitting right next to me. I'm going to actually, I think, start this either today or tomorrow. But I've been a big fan of his ever since I read The Nightmare Man, which I bought completely as a cover buy in Barnes & Noble a couple years ago. And I just really enjoy his kind of style of supernatural adjacent thrillers. I was really excited about this one because this is one where like the supernatural is really toned down, and arguably maybe not even in this book. You can argue that. I don't think I would argue that, but you can argue that. But let's read the premise here. The sole survivor of a serial killer might hold the key to stopping a new spree of murders in this propulsive horror thriller in the vein of The Black Phone and The Whisper Man. Dark and twisting at every turn, fans of Catriona Ward will love this chilling new tale and the devious, inventive horror author that Peter Ferris calls the clear heir to Stephen King. Beware the one who got away. Father Silence once terrorized the rural town of Twisted Tree, disguising himself as a priest to prey on the most vulnerable members of society. When the police finally found his house of horrors, they uncovered 19 bodies and 1 survivor. A boy now locked away in a hospital for the criminally insane. Nearly 2 decades later, Father Silence is finally put to death. But by the next morning, the detective who made the original arrest is found dead. A new serial killer is taking credit for the murder and calling himself the Outcast. The detective's daughter, Tess Claiborne, is a detective herself, haunted by childhood trauma and horrified by the death of her father and the resurgence of Father Silence's legacy. When Tess's daughter is kidnapped by the Outcast, Tess is forced to face her worst fears and long-buried memories. With no leads to follow, she travels back to Twisted Tree to visit the boy who survived and see what secrets might be buried in the tangled web of his broken mind. With captivating prose and an old-school horror flair, Sleep Tight is a must-read haunting tale from a true master of the genre. This is a fun one. This is a really fun one. This is a really solid crime thriller, whodunit, super twisty and super turny. I was really thrilled with this. I quite liked reading from the perspectives of our main characters. We get kind of a disjointed look through our main character Tess's eyes, and then through sort of through the lens of our maybe perpetrator. And I'm just going to kind of leave it at that because I think the balance there worked really well. And then the kind of layering of all these different characters and their motivations works really nicely. We have a lot of extremely flawed characters. A lot of extremely flawed characters. And maybe not so much likable characters. And I really love when you take extremely flawed characters and put them in a way in which you have a reason to root for them and you don't feel bad for rooting for their success, but you also understand why maybe you would never want to hang out with these people in real life. And I feel like that's like a really great categorization for Tess and her husband as they're searching for their daughter, and like the frantic things that they go to in search of their daughter in this kind of strange resurgence of a past crime. And it's actually going to be kind of a theme for a book that I talk about a little bit later. But I found this really fun. This is, I think, my favorite thing that I've read from J.H. Merkert so far. And probably because he really does stray away from the supernatural elements coming in towards the end. And while there are moments that I kind of questioned and I was like, I don't know if that happens in real life. But again, I don't really understand psychology to that extent of what's being discussed here. but I do think that, like, just, like, grounding it so much in reality definitely benefited J.H. Markert, more so than it did with something like Mr. Lullaby or The Nightmare Man. The Nightmare Man I thought was great. Again, the supernatural elements kind of came out of nowhere at the end. But when you look at something like Mr. Lullaby, where it felt like it was the setup for a series, which at the end of this book he hints that it actually might be, you kind of are left wanting more and not feeling like you have all of the answers. You get all of the answers from the conclusion in this novel. And it's just a really, really fast-paced, well-done, twisty-turny narrative, and I had so much fun with this. So this was a 5-star read for me. Definitely my favorite thing from Markert so far, and I just cannot wait to read more from him. Speaking of authors that I can't wait to read more from, we have The Unseen by Anya Ahlborn. This is Anya Ahlborn's latest release. If you do not know, Anya Ahlborn is one of my favorite authors. She is a go-to instant buy author for me. I did get this in a recent Nightworms package, and I was thrilled when it showed up. This is one of the few books that I have been super thrilled with receiving in Nightworms this year, but I was pumped on this. I'm going to read the inside plot. Do you see it? Isla Hansen, a mother reeling from a devastating loss, is beside herself with grief when a mysterious orphan appears on the outskirts of the Hansen's secluded Colorado property. Although strange and unexplainable, the child's presence breathes new life into Isla. But as they settle in, Isla's husband, Luke, and their 5 children notice peculiarities that hint at something far beyond the ordinary. Anomalies that challenge the boundaries of sanity. The tension within the Hansen... I don't know if it's Hansen or Hansen. I'm kind of just going back and forth. The tension within the Hansen household grows, and with it, the sense that there is something very wrong with the new kid in the house. The Unseen is a haunting tale that walks the line between the familiar and the unknown, drawing us into a chilling narrative where reality itself feels just out of reach. Okay. If you're unfamiliar with Anya Ahlborn, she writes horror of the family unit. Everything that she writes is all about what lengths you would go to for your family. And what do you do when sometimes somebody in your family is the villain? This is a great example of her style of writing familial horror. I feel like since it's like literally the topic that she always writes about, I would get bored by it, and I have consistently been impressed time and time again with her way to, again, write horror of the home, I think is the best way to say it. I loved this book. This is a 5-star read for me. There's a great diverse cast of characters between all of the family members here. We have, again, extremely flawed characters, and just characters who, in their heart of hearts, all believe that they are doing the right thing, but doing so for the wrong reasons and therefore messing up. Really well done, unique perspectives. All of the chapters are told through the perspectives of different members of the family while they're dealing with this foster child who's been brought in that they don't understand, and it becomes scary. The final scene of this book is really, like, devastatingly gut-wrenching. I would absolutely check all trigger warnings before diving into this. That's kind of like a blanket thing for Anya Ahlborn. Always check the trigger warnings because they are bleak. She does not write happy endings. This does not have a happy ending, but it does have a very, like, gut punch ending that I was not prepared for when I was reading this. And again, it just has really intriguing characters. The oldest son, Gus, was definitely my favorite character to read about, and one of my only criticisms with this book is just that I wish his storyline felt a little bit more wrapped up at the end. I feel like we kind of get an ending for him, and then it's just like, and moving on. And I just really wanted more from that character because he was such a rich figure to kind of put into this narrative, especially considering, like, who his parents are and how his siblings operate. But I really loved this kind of look into a very dysfunctional family, basically being torn apart by the inability for their parents to understand their child's needs, or their children's needs, I guess is the better way to say that. And I think that it's fantastic. This is definitely one of my favorite things that I've read from Anya Ahlborn. I don't love it as much as Brother. I don't know if I'll ever read something that I love as much as Brother, but if you are a fan of The Devil Crept In by Anya, you will love this. This feels very similar in tone and style and narrative and bleakness. And I just had an absolute thrill with this. I do have a full in-depth review on this book as well if you are interested in checking that out. Okay, next up I listened to an audiobook because I've been doing audiobooks recently as a way to kind of like read nonfiction. And I read Cabinet of Curiosities, A Historical Tour of the Unbelievable, the Unsettling, and the Bizarre by Aaron Mahnke. Now, when I read this, I did not realize that this was basically snippets of a podcast that Aaron Mahnke has done turned into a book. And yes, he does include new things in there that hadn't been featured on the podcast, but I was not aware that it is just snippets from a podcast when I read it until I was already like in the book. So let's read the premise. The new book, based on the long-running hit podcast by Aaron Mahnke, which was translated into over 120 million downloads to date, and a monthly average of over 2 million listeners. The podcast, Aaron Mahnke's Cabinet of Curiosities, I found this on an audiobook site, so I didn't even read this book description. I got like literally just like a description of what it was about. When it did not say podcast this many times. But it says, the podcast has delighted millions of listeners for years with tales of wonderful, astounding, and downright bizarre people, places, and things throughout history. Now, in The Cabinet of Curiosities, the book, learn the fascinating story of the invention of the croissant in a country that was not France, and relive the adventures of a dog that stowed away and went to war, only to help capture a German spy. Along the way, readers will pass through the American state of Franklin, watch Abraham Lincoln's son be rescued by his assassin's brother, and learn how too many crash landings inspired one pilot to leave the airline industry and trek for the stars. For the first time ever, Aaron has gathered scores of his favorites in print and curated them into a beautiful topical collection for devoted followers and new fans. I've read something by Aaron Mahnke before. One of his other books that was like a podcast. I think Lore. I think I read one of his Lore books, and it doesn't translate well into book form, in my opinion. I did enjoy the audiobook because I liked hearing the stories, but it felt so all over the place. Like, he categorized it in ways that were supposed to be similar, and at first it felt that way, and then it just kind of went off the rails, and I was like, I don't even understand how any of these stories in this chapter are related whatsoever. It was fine to listen to, but I wouldn't really call it like a cabinet of curiosities. Like, I was hoping to learn about like occult items and haunted items and actual like cabinets of curiosity things, like things that you would put in an occult shelf, you know, like actual curio items. And instead it was just like loony coincidences or like weird things that happen, and like that was cool, but it didn't feel like dark and mysterious to me. It just kind of felt very historical and quirky. My favorite story was the one about the Pringles box, and the fact that the guy who invented like the Pringles tube was cremated and buried in the Pringles tube per his request. I think that's really cool and funny and whimsical and dark all at the same time, and I was really hoping for more stories like that, and it just kind of felt not goth enough for me. So yeah, that was a 3-star read for me. It just really felt all over the place, so it is what it is. I'm listening to an audiobook right now on the biography of Anna Wintour, so totally also not goth or dark or mysterious, but I like my fashion books, so that'll be my audiobook for the month, I think. Moving on to more horror. The Man Made of Smoke by Alex North. Whew! Alright, I have a whole review on this as well. Oh man. Alright, I'm gonna read the inside flap. This is by the guy who wrote The Whisper Man. I said this in my review. I read The Whisper Man a couple years ago. I really enjoyed it. Don't really remember what it was about, but I remember enjoying it. Didn't really have that much lasting power in my brain, but I remember enjoying it, so I wanted to pick something else out by Alex North. This was on my most anticipated reads of 2025 list, so I grabbed it. I'm gonna read the inside flap. Dan Garvey's life has been haunted by the crime he witnessed as a child, narrowly escaping an encounter with a notorious serial killer. He's dedicated his life since to profiling criminals, eager to seek justice for innocent victims. So when his father dies under suspicious circumstances, Dan revisits the small island community where he grew up, determined to uncover the truth about his death. Is it possible that the monster he remembers from his childhood nightmares has returned after all these years? With his signature shock and suspense, Alex North brings us The Man Made of Smoke. By turns emotional, introspective, and utterly terrifying, this is a story of fathers and sons, shadows and secrets, and the fight we all face to escape with the trauma of the past. Alright, so before I dive into this, I have to talk about how I review books. And I've said this a lot on my channel, but there are 2 times where a book that should be rated one way, objectively, is not rated that way by me. The first is if I love an author and they're one of my favorite authors and I read something and I absolutely love and devour it, but I've read them better, if that makes sense. I've seen them write better. I've had books that I like more. That will drop you down from what should be a 5-star read to a 4-star read because I expect more from an author I love. I'm always super critical on authors I adore. The second time that a book will not get the rating it actually deserves is if it is something that should be a 5-star read, but has something so deeply disturbing and unnerving in it that I can't in good conscience give it a 5-star rating because there are moments that I didn't enjoy because of how unsettled I am, especially around a really dark subject matter. And that is when a 5-star read becomes a 4-star read because I just cannot in good conscience give it that pure joy 5-star, I loved every moment of this rating. Most notoriously on my channel is Gone to See the Riverman. That is probably one of my favorite horror novels. It's by Christopher Triana. A whole video on that. That book is insane. It is incredible. It is beautiful. It is dark. It is twisted. It should be a 5-star read. Can't give it to him. There are things that happen in that book that I will never get out of my brain. And I am so deeply unnerved by and could not give that a 5-star rating. I look back at that reading experience as one of the best reading experiences in the horror community I've ever had. I adore that book. Adore that book. And I feel icky saying I adore that book because it's so messed up. That's kind of how I feel about this. This should objectively be a 5-star read. This is an incredible novel. I can't give it 5 stars because of all of the chapters about James and Barnaby. It's really interesting when you read so many serial killer novels, especially when you're reading something like Sleep Tight, which has a very similar premise of this kind of resurgence, quasi-copycat killer returning years after and like going after like the children involved in the original crime. Like very, very similar narratives there, except this one has the perspective of a victim. And it kind of reminds me a lot of Dr. Sleep. Mainly like the film, because I think the scene is so intense of the baseball boy at times, and this is a heavy read. This is such a heavy read that after I was done reading it, I literally didn't pick up a single scary story, and I read like 4 issues of Vogue and like started reading a fashion novel, 2 different fashion novels, because I just like, I couldn't dive back into horror. Like I needed a serious break after this. I look at Alex North as a different author now, because now I see what he can do. This book is disturbing, but it's great. It's a really cool mystery. I like that it really kind of leans into the reality of situations where like sometimes you don't get all the answers. And I said this in my full-length review on this video, but it reminds me a lot too of like In the Woods by Tana French. You do kind of feel left wanting more at the end of this because you don't get all the answers, but that's kind of the point that the novel is saying, is like sometimes tragic things happen and you don't always know why. And I like that there's so much open-endedness to all of this. I like the twists and turns. It gets like real Riley Sager twisty-turny in here, and I had a blast with that because I didn't see the twist coming. So much so that like at one point I really thought that Alex North was writing the novel kind of like the way that Hiding Lies was written, where like you're already reading from the perspective of who you think the killer is. And he just kind of flips everything on its head and pulls the rug out from under you, and you don't see it coming. And I thought it was done really, really well, to the point that like I didn't realize a twist was coming. I had fun with this. I like our characters. I think they are pretty flawed as well. They're not as like rich and approachable as I would normally like, but I think kind of having these like very average figures thrust into this like pretty horrific world works really, really well. And it also allows the impact of the reveal and the twist to kind of hit you a little bit harder. And I really enjoyed that. And again, we have, and this has kind of been a theme throughout like almost all of the books that I've read recently, starting with like Schrader's Chord, definitely with Sleep Tight and the Unseen, and this one. But I'm getting a lot of like parent and child relationships, and like how like parenting, and especially with dads, when you're younger, like really resonates with you as an adult and what you choose to do in your life, which is like a very like generic thing, but that's been a huge theme since I read Schrader's Chord. And I don't keep intending to pick up these stories with these themes, but I just keep doing it. And I think this one has a really great connection between a father and his son, especially as you're reading about a son trying to follow in the footsteps of his dad after his dad has passed away, trying to solve a mystery. And I really enjoyed the different perspectives that you get throughout this book, and like just following the narrative and trying to unravel the mystery. And there's a moment where like they'll write chapters of his father figuring something out and reveal it to the reader, and then the next chapter will be how his son comes to the same conclusion. And I loved that structure for this book. I thought it worked really well. So this is a fantastic read. I'm really impressed by Alex North. I need to pick up his other books. He's had 2 other books since The Whisper Man called The Shadows and The Angel Maker. And I have to pick those up because if they're anything like this, I feel like I'm going to be blown away. And I'm still thinking about how dark this book is. And just the James and Barnaby chapters just really tore out my soul. They were dark. I was not prepared for what this book was. But yeah, should be a 5-star. Can't give it a 5-star. Definitely worth a read. Definitely check the trigger warnings. This is, I mean, I just read an Anya Allborn book, and this is the one that's like kind of got me really flustered and like sad and tragic. But yeah, no, a freaking amazing reading month for me. I am so happy. And I just read 2 other awesome books. I've got like I think a 5-star and a 4-star that I just read, and I am just like pumped right now on what I've been reading. So thank God, because I was in a huge reading slump for the first half of this year. But yeah, let's keep it up. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post 2 to 3 times a week, hopefully getting closer to more 3 times, because I now have time to actually like read more with my job and everything. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah!